Part 1. Whispers in the Blackwood Forest had a reputation. Not a friendly one, mind you. It wasn't just the way the ancient pines clawed at the sky, blocking out the sun, or the gnarled, thorny undergrowth that snagged at your clothes and skin. It was a feeling, a constant, gnawing sense of being watched. A feeling that the forest itself didn't want you there. Local legend whispered of a creature residing deep within its heart, the Blackwood Man. Not a man in the traditional sense, of course, but a twisted, corrupted entity formed from the very essence of the forest's darkness. Some said he was a vengeful spirit, a guardian wronged by the careless greed of humans. Others claimed he was something far older, something that predated humanity itself. The town of Heaven bordered the Blackwood. For generations, the townsfolk had maintained a wary respect for the forest. They took what they needed, firewood, herbs, the occasional deer, but they never took too much. They understood the unspoken agreement: respect the Blackwood, and it would respect you. But times were changing. A new company, Redwood Industries, had arrived, promising jobs and prosperity. They saw the Blackwood not as a sacred place, but as a resource, a gold mine of timber waiting to be exploited. They began logging operations, clearing vast swathes of the ancient forest. The townsfolk protested, but their voices were drowned out by the lure of money and progress. Mayor Thompson, swayed by Redwood Industries' promises of tax revenue, brushed aside their concerns. "It's just superstition," he declared. "The Blackwood's just trees, nothing to be afraid of." But the warnings were not just superstition. They were a plea, an acknowledgement of the price they would have to pay if they disrupted that ancient agreement. And the Blackwood Forest, it seemed, was ready to collect. It started subtly: equipment malfunctions, unexplained accidents, lost workers, the sort of things that could be easily explained away. But the feeling of dread grew thicker, heavier, settling over Oakhaven like a shroud. Then the disappearances began. Old Man Hemlock, who'd lived on the edge of the forest his entire life, was the first to vanish. He'd been a vocal opponent of Redwood Industries, warning anyone who would listen about the consequences of disturbing the Blackwood. They found his cabin empty, the door ajar, a single black feather lying on the floor. After that, it was Thomas, one of the loggers. He was working late, operating a massive felling machine, when he simply disappeared. The machine was found idling, still running, but Thomas was gone. No sign of a struggle, no sign of foul play, just gone. Part 2. Twisted branches and silent screams. The disappearances sent a wave of fear through Oakhaven. People stopped venturing out at night. They locked their doors and windows, clinging to the illusion of safety. The once bustling town became a ghost town, haunted by whispers and shadows. Sheriff Brody, a man of logic and reason, tried to maintain order. He dismissed the stories of the Blackwood Man as folklore, focusing instead on finding concrete evidence. But the evidence was elusive. There were no witnesses, no footprints, no discernible motive. He organized search parties, combing the forest for any sign of the missing, but the Blackwood seemed to swallow them whole. The trees were so dense, the undergrowth so tangled, it was easy to get lost. The forest itself seemed to be working against them, twisting paths, obscuring landmarks, playing tricks on their senses. Some of the search parties returned empty-handed, their faces etched with fear. They spoke of strange sounds, whispers carried on the wind, the rustling of leaves when there was no breeze. The distant, almost imperceptible sound of someone screaming. One search party never returned at all. They found their camp a few days later, empty. The tents were torn to shreds, the supplies scattered. There was blood, but not much. and no bodies, just silence. A heavy, oppressive silence that seemed to suffocate the very air. Sheriff Brady started to doubt his own sanity. He'd always been a rational man, a believer in facts and evidence. But the Blackwood Forest seemed to defy all logic, all reason. He couldn't shake the feeling that something malevolent was at play, something ancient and powerful. One night, as he sat alone in his office poring over the case files, he heard a scratching at the window. He looked up, startled. A branch was tapping against the glass, a thick, twisted branch covered in thorns. He frowned. There were no trees that close to the sheriff's office. He got up and opened the window. The branch reached out, snaking towards him. He recoiled, slamming the window shut. He stared at the branch, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew, with a chilling certainty, that the Blackwood was watching him, that it knew his fear, that it was toying with him. Part 3. A Feast of Shadows. The logging operations continued, despite the disappearances. Redwood Industries was determined to finish the job, no matter the cost. They brought in more workers, more machinery, more security. They were determined to tame the Blackwood. But the forest fought back. The accidents became more frequent, more gruesome. A worker was crushed beneath a falling tree. Another was caught in the gears of a machine, his body mangled beyond recognition. The loggers became superstitious, whispering about curses and angry spirits. They started seeing things in the shadows, twisted figures lurking between the trees, glowing eyes watching them from the darkness. They heard voices, whispering their names, promising them pain. One night, the main logging camp was attacked. No one saw what happened. There were no survivors. In the morning, the camp was a scene of carnage. The tents were ripped apart, the equipment destroyed. The bodies of the loggers were scattered across the clearing, torn limb from limb. The only thing left was the silence, a thick, oppressive silence that seemed to mock the horror that had taken place. Sheriff Brady arrived at the scene, his face grim. He'd seen a lot of terrible things in his life, but nothing like this. This was unnatural. This was the work of something evil. He stood in the center of the clearing, surrounded by the carnage, and he knew that he was out of his depth. He needed help. He needed someone who understood the forces at play. He thought of Old Man Hemlock. He may have been just an old coot, but he knew the Blackwood better than anyone. He knew its secrets. He knew its dangers. But Old Man Hemlock was gone. Then he remembered his granddaughter, Sarah. She'd spent a lot of time with her grandfather in the forest. She'd listened to his stories. She'd learned his secrets. Sarah Hemlock was a recluse. She lived alone in her grandfather's cabin, shunning contact with the outside world. Sheriff Brady knew it wouldn't be easy to get her to talk, but he had no other choice. Part 4. The Witch of Blackwood. Sarah Hemlock was unlike anyone Sheriff Brady had ever met. She had a wild, untamed look about her, her eyes dark and piercing, her hair a tangled mess of black and brown. She smelled of earth and herbs and something else, something wild and untamed. She eyed him with suspicion when he arrived at her cabin. She clearly didn't want him there. "What do you want, Sheriff?" she asked, her voice low and husky. Brady explained the situation, telling her about the disappearances, the accidents, the massacre at the logging camp. He told her about the legends of the Blackwood Man. Sarah listened in silence, her face unreadable. When he was finished, she simply said, "I know about the Blackwood Man." Brady felt a flicker of hope. "Can you help us?" he asked. "Can you tell us how to stop him?" Sarah shook her head. "There's no stopping him," she said. "He's too strong. He's too angry." "A what?" "There must be." Part 5. Sacrifice. Brady knew he had to act. Sarah's warnings echoed in his head. He gathered a small group of himself, Sarah and three of the most sensible citizens. They drove to the headquarters of Redwood Industries, an extensive complex of offices and logging equipment. Looked at him in every man's eyes. It was empty. The workers fled, leaving behind a ghost town full of cars and empty promises. Brady felt a grim satisfaction. Justice, in a sense, has already prevailed. They found Mayor Thompson hiding in his office with a bottle of whiskey in his hands. He was a broken man with guilt and fear on his face. He finally realized the seriousness of his mistake and the cost of his greed. Sarah stepped forward. "Blackwood is demanding damages," she said coldly. "It requires sacrifice. Those who have benefited from its destruction must pay for it." Thompson did not resist. He knew he was responsible for the horror that had befallen Oakhaven. He accepted his fate. Brady took him and the two Redwood executives to the edge of the forest. Sarah began the ritual by singing in an ancient language, drawing strength from the earth and trees. Blackwood seemed to stir. The shadows thickened. The wind howled like a banshee. When the ritual reached its climax, the three men were sucked into the forest, swallowed by darkness. Their screams echoed through the trees and then died away. Part 6. Restless rest. The man from Blackwood was at peace. The disappearances stopped. The accidents stopped. A fragile peace reigned over Oakhaven. But the city has changed forever. Logging operations have been stopped. The forestry industry has disappeared, leaving behind only broken promises and a disfigured landscape. The townspeople returned to their old habits, living in harmony with the forest. Brady was still the sheriff, but he wasn't the same person anymore. He saw the darkness, felt the presence of something ancient and sinister. He understood the power of Blackwood, the importance of respecting its boundaries. He often visited Sarah, seeking her wisdom and guidance. He learned about ancient customs, forgotten rituals, and the secrets of the forest. He became Blackwood's guardian, protecting him from future threats. One day, Sarah showed him a small tree growing in the heart of the forest. "Ebony heals," she said. "It is being restored, but it will never be forgotten, and it will always demand respect." Brady looked at the sapling, a symbol of hope and renewal. He knew that the Black Forest would always be a part of Oakhaven, a reminder of the price of greed and the power of nature, and he knew that the city would never forget the lessons they had learned in the shadow of the Black Forest. He stood guard, ready to serve, a changed man, connected to the forest, forever keeping its secrets and ensuring its respect. The Black Forest was watching him, silent, patient, and now he was a part of it.